Well, I guess this one is by popular demand. Apparently a lot of people really want me to review Spinister, and apparently even more want me to review Rotorstorm. So what's this? I seem to have an IDW-inspired retool of Spinister, and a special Wheeljack. And no, not the one you're familiar with. I guess I'm going to get to do my review of the Saboteur vs. Scientist box after all. Rotorstorm. This is the first Generation Select figure I've ever seen that was reasonably priced, same cost as one of the regular deluxes from Siege. Initially, I had no plans on getting him because all of his promotional photography had the figure with Spinister's head. But having him in hand with the correct head, and I'd say his look is great, though I never actually owned a Rotorstorm. If I'm not mistaken, they just didn't release the original G1 Rotorstorm figure in the US, so I never even heard of this guy before I read the IDW comic. He is incredibly 80s and gaudy in the best way possible. Normally, I'm not big on paint, but it is used to fantastic effect here. I don't see much point in paint when it's used to coat an entire part, but when it's used to create this level of visual breakup in a single continuous part, it's pretty cool. I need to point out that the tampos on his shoulders are interesting. They are done over slats that really alter the dimensions of what they're going over. Not even that many years ago, something like this would have been impossible, so the world we now live in is kinda crazy. All that said though, this guy looks nothing like the original figure or his design in IDW, and Spinister's mold doesn't quite fit him if you are looking for an update to the G1 design. This is a heavy redeco with a retooled head, and that will matter to not just a few people, so ultimately this will leave a portion of the fanbase unsatisfied. Speaking of the head though, oof, that's a good head sculpt. That hot pink visor, that dark blue helmet, that Robo soul patch. Actually, that last bit makes it slightly less cool to me, but the rest of this looks so good I can forgive the facial hair of my worst boss. Thanks to this being the Spinister mold, the cut of this figure is super dynamic and it looks cool doing just about anything. Seriously, he looks awesome basically always. I often find myself setting this thing down at random just to do something else, and when I look back to this randomly placed figure, I'm blown away by how much it looks like he's in a power stance. I'm not a fan of the bell bottoms, in so much that every time I notice them, I hate them, but to the figure's credit, I don't notice them often, especially this version of it. Because of that slimming silver contrasting with the dark blue, it makes some of the width disappear. The Spinister style back-mounted blades is cool and all, but the mechanism is slightly annoying. Yes, it's really cool that they can store up like this, but the mechanism is really weak, just like on Spinister, so it's super easy to knock over and have to fix. I really had hoped they would have fixed this flaw with the release of this, but no such luck. It was a good idea. It works-ish, just not executed in the best way. His arm guns are exactly the same as Spinister's, but the paint turning them two-toned really does a number to make these things stand out and look unique. I especially like the minigun barrels on this one. Weirdly enough, the base plastics are different on these. Okay? Posing on this figure is great. He doesn't really have anything other than the typical types of joints found on Siege figures, but they all seem to have above average range, except for the knees, where they can pull just slightly over 90 on their own, but you can cheat them for the full deep knee experience. I also think this actually has a significantly more posable head than the original, so it does have that going for it. Transformation on this guy is frustrating. Since his legs are borderline identical, but his transformation is asymmetrical, you always have to check to make sure you are using the correct one. And you have to make sure you rotate one of them in a very specific order at multiple joints so it fits properly, but it still never wants to. And I pop off the feet all the time during the transformation because of the weird way those work. Plus, the way the elbows tab into the bottom of the feet is just kind of irritating to do. The way the chest unfurls is a highlight and tons of fun to do on its own. Were the whole thing defined by this one step, it would be a great transformation. Helicopter mode is fantastic, but I don't ever want to keep it in this mode because it's resting directly on a painted surface. I also think the whole underside cockpit thing is stupid with its mild flow-forming nature. I really don't see why they didn't have the cockpit split in two, or just had the legs be asymmetrical. And even when you do it right, the underside doesn't want to hold together. It's got a pretty serious case of visible arm syndrome going on, but they do actually kind of manage to blend into the look. I think these are supposed to be peg holes, but they are too shallow, so they don't fit anything, not even blast effects. All that said, this is a pretty cool chopper mode. If I had a flight stand for it, I wouldn't be too worried, but it resting on the paint is just a no-go. Also, the landing gear is hilarious to me because it balances just fine on the other cockpit without it. A great mold, a great retool, but I don't know if you aren't really connected to the characters that you actually need two versions of this. And it kind of pains me to say this considering how much I love Spinister's character from the IDW comics, but I think if you were to get only one, they are the same price, and this one looks way better. But you know, Decepticons get fewer figures than Autobots, so who knows, maybe you need more cons. I don't know your life. Buy whichever one you want. I don't recommend one more than the other. I just think this one looks more striking. But that's not necessarily a positive to everyone. Anyways, on to my new Wheeljack. Actually, this is the old one. Subscriber and fellow YouTuber, actually a little bit bigger than me, Monologi Robotach, actually contacted me and asked if I'd be interested in the 3D printed upgrade kit for Wheeljack that he designed. I agreed, and he sent it to me along with other stuff, all for free. It would mean a ton to me if you guys would go check out his channel, and spoiler alert, the stuff he sent me that he made is all fantastic. He also designs and 3D prints his own leader scale figures, like the old leader scale figures, so the actually big ones. His stuff is really impressive and he needs more views. He also has a Facebook where you can talk about the stuff he's designing, and an Etsy where you can buy the stuff that he's designed for shockingly reasonable prices. Most of them you have to print yourself, but if you can do that, then the designs are only leader priced, plus the materials you have to supply yourself. I do want to make it clear to my audience though that these are not the actual figures. You will not buy these and have them arrive by mail. The ones that are over $100 or more will be shipped to you. Everything else you have to 3D print yourself either with your own printer or take into a printing shop. He's also designed a gun barrel for the Wheeljack Megamaster, who I've been trying to make a gun barrel for out of PVC myself and been failing at. Links in the description. Anyways, on to the upgrade kit. It's amazing how much more this one little change makes me like this figure. Sure, the arms are still weird as hell, but you know what? I care so much less now that the chest looks good. I am legitimately baffled that the designers of this figure went to all the extra effort of designing this guy so it had a more complex, less fun, less accurate chest when the whole point of Earthrise was G1 accuracy, and the G1 accurate chest is literally the more simple solution. Especially when the original looked so bad with its windshield that just flat stopped at the character's waist and in vehicle mode with the big ugly split down the middle. Now, technically, there is more to this upgrade kit by Monologi, and I wanted to use some of it, but it was designed with the idea of cutting up the feet in mind, and I'm not willing to do that. I thought at least I could use the feet extensions, and they will install on the unaltered figure, but they can't deploy because with the strut behind them being unextended, it blocks them from getting out even half as far as they need to go. Oh well, I'm not tremendously broken up about it. It would have been a little cool to give him a little more height, but it's no big deal. Posing is ever so, very, incredibly, slightly, barely negatively impacted by the upgrade kit. Since it hangs down a little further than the old set, the waist can't rotate all the way around. It pretty much rotates as much as you could ever want it to, but at the same time, before, it could technically spin all the way around. The new transformation is a huge improvement, with the new parts having done away with the absolute fiddliest bit of the whole process. With the front bits of the windshield replaced by these flat filler pieces, you don't need to adjust these during transformation. They just go in and come out in the correct orientation, removing an entire 2 annoying steps from the transformation. The end result is this, and oh my god, I like this so much more. The doors are still heinously thick, but the change of the windshield has turned him into less of a wedge on wheels and back into a car. And not just any car, the car he's supposed to be. If you look at it from the side, the top sits a little proud, but I can't be bothered to care, especially when it doesn't annoy me half as much as the shoulder cannon being asymmetrical with its missile favoring the stage right side of his car mode. That tiny detail is like an OCD sliver in my brain. This little, simple upgrade kit is such a vast improvement, it took a figure I kind of hated and turned it into something I actually like. Well done, my guy. But that's not all. He sent me this whole mess of other stuff, so let's take a look, shall we? He sent me 3 pairs of guns for the Titan's Return Headmasters, one for Hardhead, one for Chrome Dome, and one for Brainstorm. Hilariously enough, he didn't send me one for Highbrow, the only member of the team I actually have. Oh well, more guns for more people. Or should I say, more guns for Trigger Happy! He sent what looks to be Thunderclash's missile launcher, but I guess this is for some G2 toys? Also included is Sideswipe's flare gun and shoulder rocket, along with Jazz's pistol and Prowl's rifle. They're kind of a little Titanic for Siege figures. I don't really care though. They are better than the stuff they came with. Though, I do have to say, with it being a 3D printed part, I'm worried about the attachment method of Sideswipe's launcher. I think it could really break easily. Speaking of shoulder rockets though, he sent me one for the Reveal the Shield Jazz, which is a figure I do not have, but hilariously, since I never had a Jazz with a shoulder rocket, I only vaguely recognized this part, so I assumed it was for Prowl, who I know often gets the shoulder launcher treatment. And I discovered that while this part was meant for a figure closing on a decade older, this pegs decently well onto the Siege Prowl through the lip on the door wing. So, now this belongs to him. He also included this heap of missiles for G2 figures. I also got this gun I vaguely recognize. I'm not sure who it belongs to. I want to say it's one of the Dinobots. Lastly, he sent me these brackets for Earthrise Trailbreaker. The point of these is to make Trailbreaker taller than Hoist, but I don't know that these are finished yet. It seems like there's supposed to be an extra bit on the back. Also, there were a couple different varieties of windshield if I wanted to change Wheeljack's look, but I'll just stick with the classic blue, thank you very much. Big fan of the way that looks. So I don't know where you can buy the rest of the stuff he sent me. It doesn't appear to be on the Etsy store, but the Wheeljack stuff is there, and provided you can get it printed, this is a tidy upgrade kit. This really has changed my opinion on this figure. Great work, dude. Anyways, that's not half of what I have to say, but it's enough of what I have to say. And I know, you know, what everyone else tells you to do at the end of these videos. So, if you liked what you saw here, please do that. And if you'd like to take it a step further, then please, share this video with any friend you think may be interested. I hope you all enjoyed listening to me waste your time.